Hello, my name is Samantha, or Outspoken Samantha, or Outspoken Sam, depending on what platform you're watching this on. On my channel, I like to talk about current events and issues that I think matter to everyday people. You know, those of us who are not CEOs of big corporations, who are not part of the mainstream media, who don't live in the Hollywood bubble, and are not politicians in Washington, D.C. You know, those of us that actually have to live with the consequences of the decisions being made by the people in the previous category. If you feel like you want to support another voice of logic and reason, and you want to support my channel, please like this video, leave a comment below, and consider subscribing. All of these things help to support my channel and help to expand my reach, hopefully to find more people who value logic, reason, and sanity. Also, please be sure to find me on Rumble under Outspoken Sam in the event that YouTube decides that I have violated their community standards and kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. So we all remember a few months ago when Florida came out with its parental rights and education bill, which was tagged with the lie, it's a don't say gay bill. Even though it doesn't say the word gay at all in the bill anywhere, it doesn't mention a specific group of people, it doesn't target a specific group of people, it doesn't say that you can talk about certain kinds of sexuality with children while you can't talk about other kinds of sexuality with children. It just says that these conversations with children between the grades of like kindergarten through third grade are not okay. Keep it to reading, writing, spelling, math, and that's it. And we're talking about 5 to 8-year-olds. So I think that really shouldn't be a controversial subject. It shouldn't be a controversial bill. We really just want our kids to go to school and be learning the basics of education. And I don't think that that's too much to ask. Then came to light these videos of corporate meetings in Disney where the CEOs and executives were talking about how they wanted to put more LGBTQIA material in Disney movies and in their shows and in their programming, and that they pretty much didn't care what parents thought or what they wanted. So, of course, a lot of us responded and said, that's not okay. I'm going to cancel my Disney Plus subscription. I'm going to boycott Disney. I am not going to participate in this. And of course, the response that we expected happened, which was to be called bigots and transphobes and discriminatory and all the things that we're usually called when we try and stand up for our children. It couldn't possibly be that we're trying to be parents to our children and that we're trying to monitor the things that are in front of them and that we actually care about the material that they are exposed to. And a lot of us want to be able to put them in front of a Disney movie and not worry about what's going to be in it, like we used to be able to do. So these are all things that, just kind of transpired. A lot of us, including myself, canceled our Disney Plus subscription, which is really sad because I love Disney. I grew up with Disney. I have seen most of the earlier movies. I can probably recite them word for word. I know all of the songs. I've taken my family to Disney a couple of times. So many great memories. I love it. So it makes me sad to be in the position where now I have to worry about what is in these shows. I have to worry about what messages are being sent. I have to worry about what kind of underlying influence is coming from these programs. And as a parent, I don't want to have to worry about that. I want to be able to put a really nice Disney movie in front of my kids and know that it's going to be based on some kind of overall message of kindness, or it's just going to have some really fun music, and I'm not going to have to sit back and have like an in-depth conversation about what we just watched with like my 6-year-old. So, and I know a lot of the argument has been like, well, you don't care if it's, a heterosexual relationship. You don't care if it's like a traditional relationship or that it's always between a man and a woman. And what my response to that is like, who cares? Because that is not, nobody in their right mind is putting their child in front of a Disney movie for relationship advice or for a model as to what relationships are supposed to look like. Because if you really look at it, relationships in Disney movies are terrible. I was watching The Little Mermaid. This was quite a while ago. I remember watching that movie when it first came out, which ages me. It shows you how old I am. My friend's mom had purchased it on VHS, which again, ages me a little bit. But I was so excited. We watched it every day, probably multiple times a day, probably drove our parents crazy. But I was so excited and I loved it. And I remember seeing the scene, I don't know, where Ariel and her dad are arguing and Ariel wants more independence. And she goes, "I'm 16 years old. I'm not a child." And when I'm 8 or 9 years old, I'm looking at this 16-year-old and going, yeah, Ariel's got her life together. She totally knows what's up. Her dad just doesn't, he doesn't know anything and he just needs to let her do her thing. And now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're 16. You are so young. You're just a baby. But what's horrible is that she ends up going to this like really horrible human being and gets herself into a situation that her dad doesn't know about. And then he has to come and rescue her. And then she ends up marrying this guy like 3 days later that she hasn't even been able to talk to in that time. And she's only 16. That's a terrible model for a relationship. There is literally nobody in their right mind that's putting their daughter in front of the Little Mermaid and being like, that's what I want you to aspire to. These are the goals. Like, nobody. But as an 8 or 9-year-old, that's not what I got from that movie. I really didn't. I mean, watching Beauty and the Beast and watching Aladdin, where, it's what's on the outside that counts, what's on the inside that counts. The outside doesn't matter. When, Belle is this strong, independent woman who doesn't want a shallow guy, or, Aladdin who's this really good guy, even though he's poor, and then he, ends up having his dreams come true despite the odds being stacked against him. I mean, there's some really great messages in these movies that's really about like overcoming obstacles, or what it's being a good person, being a kind person, being a strong person. But Aladdin and Jasmine, again, they knew each other for 3 days and got married. Beauty and the Beast, I mean, she didn't even know he was a human being. And then, he turns into a human and then they get married. I mean, just not the best foundation for relationships. Nobody's looking at Disney movies and going, these are what I want your relationship goals to be. Because it's not about that. It's not about the kind of relationships that are being shown. It's not about whether or not it has traditional values. It's about the fact that Disney pretty much just gave a big middle finger to all parents, saying, we don't care what timeline that you decide in your home where you want to introduce these topics to your children. We don't care if you feel like your children are ready to hear about these things or to understand these things. We're going to take that power away from you. And if you leave your child unsupervised in front of one of our programs, they are going to learn about the things that we want them to learn about. You've decided to take a presumably male robot and put him in the store and put him in the feminine hygiene product aisle, and then had everybody around him, including men and women, offer their suggestions on what they use for their periods, so that children will get the idea that men can have periods. You're taking the power away from parents. You've told parents, I don't care if you think that this is real or not, or if this is a thing or not, or if this aligns with your value system or not. I don't care if you believe in gender identity, or that men can be women and women can be men. I don't care if you believe in the LGBTQIA agenda. I don't care. We're going to put it in front of your child and we're going to shove it in their faces, whether they are ready to understand it or not, whether or not you feel that your child is ready to grasp these concepts or not, whether or not you've had any conversation with your child about these things or not, it doesn't matter. We are going to take the power away from you as their parent, and we are going to instill the things that we believe and that we think are important. And screw you, essentially. That is the problem. It has nothing to do with dislike or any kind of hate whatsoever for an individual or for a group of people. It has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that parents are being completely disrespected, completely devalued in their role in guiding their children, in raising them and teaching them the values that they feel are important, and saying, we don't care. We're going to put this in front of your child, whether you like it or not. We're going to put it in their programming so that when you do leave your child unsupervised in front of our cartoons, they're going to learn the things that we want them to learn. As much as I love Disney, as much as I have so many good memories with Disney, as much as I love their music, I love my children more. It is more important to me that I am able to guide my children's upbringing, that I am able to teach them in the topics that I think that they need to know and when they need to know them and when I feel that they're old enough to know them. Because I know my children. You don't. I know what they're ready for, and you don't. And if I can't trust what the material that I'm putting in front of them, if I can't trust that the people producing these things respect my role as a parent, then I don't need them. I need to guide my children and to raise them with strong values far more than I need Disney. And you know what? You actually are doing a lot of us a favor, because as thousands of families have canceled their Disney Plus subscription, we have one less streaming service to keep us in front of the TV. We're spending more time together in person with our kids, instilling those strong family values. We're not spending thousands of dollars on theme park tickets, and we're not spending a ton of money on really useless, crappy Disney toys and paraphernalia. So, thank you.